All right, if you've played much pickleball, I'm sure that you have tried to hit a drop from the back of the court. And there's a decent chance that that drop has set up too high, and now your opponents get to smack it, and that's no good, is it? We hit those balls too high. So how do we solve this problem, right? This is an email I get from people all the time is like, Mark, how do I avoid popping up my drops? And by the way, this can go in the same category as popping up dinks. So let me talk about it. So first things first, we have to understand what is it that controls the height of the ball, right? If I send that drop and it goes too high and my opponents get to smack it, that ball is too high. So what is it that controls height? Now, I bet if you're at home right now watching this, you say, oh, Mark, I know what controls height, the paddle angle. And that's true. That is one thing that controls the height of the ball. The more open my paddle is, the more likely that ball is going to go up. And the more closed the paddle is, the more likely that ball is going to stay lower, right? So paddle angle is one thing that controls height. True. But there's a second thing that controls how high a ball travels, and that's what we call the swing path. Now, if my swing path, let's say I have this nice straight up and down perpendicular paddle face, okay? I promise I'll keep that angle. Okay, so let's say I've got this good angle, but if I swing from high to low as I hit my drop, from high to low, then that ball is more likely to go up, right? That's how we create topspin. And if I have that same paddle angle, but I swing, let's say, from high to low, right, I come down, that ball's more likely to then go down. That's no good either, okay? And if I have a more level swing path, then I'm more likely to get a ball, it was too low, then I'm more likely to get a ball that stays lower. So that's two things that affect the height of a ball. One is the paddle angle and one is the swing path, but that's not all. A third thing that influences how high a ball goes is how fast it comes off the paddle. Now let's say you're playing a drop. I mean, I think that drops should generally be hit as a fairly straight ball, but there is some arc to it, especially if you're receiving that ball down here, which might force you to play the drop. So there is going to be some arc. The question now becomes, how big is that arc going to be? And if when the ball comes off the paddle, it's coming off really fast, it's going to be a much bigger arc, here, like this. And that bigger arc makes it more likely your opponents are going to smack it at you. And if you hit slower with that arc as the ball comes off the paddle, well, it's going to be a smaller arc, tighter to the net, like this. So the third variable when controlling height is the speed of the ball off the paddle. So we as hitters better think about, how do I control the speed of my paddle? How do I control the speed of the ball? So one factor is how fast the paddle is moving at the moment of contact. And so what we often see is people who are hitting too fast off the paddle is they will swing and they will slow it down, right? And they'll try to decelerate as they hit. The trouble is, often when that deceleration happens, it's too late and the paddle has already hit the ball and then the energy gets transferred. But there is another way to hit the ball slower, even still while accelerating. Watch. All right, so if my normal backswing is way back here, right, you can see the butt of my paddle. There's going to be a certain amount of speed created as my paddle moves toward the ball, right? It gathers speed as it's going toward the ball, it gathers momentum, that momentum gets transferred to the ball, and then it goes pretty fast, right? If I swing the same way, but instead of having that paddle way back here, I only bring it back to here, let's say. It's got only a third of the distance to travel before contact. Well, now all of a sudden it's going to be a lot easier for me to hit the ball slowly because the paddle doesn't gather as much momentum. Here, why don't we look at this from another angle? Okay, so I'm doing this as a backhand now. So again, if my backswing is way back here, let's call this a 10 out of 10. Even if I don't swing that fast, it's got so much distance it's traveling before contact, the paddle's going to gather a lot of momentum, which gets transferred to the ball. And then all of a sudden I've got too much speed as it comes off and it sits up and they smack it. But instead of having this 10 out of 10 backswing, let's say I just bring it back to here. Let's call it a 6 out of 10. Well, now when I swing, even if I accelerate, that ball is going to travel a lot slower because the paddle hasn't gathered so much momentum. And if I want it even slower than that, let's call it a 3 out of 10, right? So this is a really important factor when it comes to controlling the height of the ball. It's controlling the speed of the ball when you're playing this drop. And having a shorter backswing can help you. Want to see a couple more? Okay, so there you have it. If you want to have better control of the height of your drops, or your dinks for that matter, you've got to have better speed control. And you're going to have better speed control if you can control the size of your backswing. All things being equal, a longer backswing will produce more speed and a higher ball when you're playing that drop, and a shorter backswing will produce less speed and a lower ball when you're playing that drop. Good luck.